The Galactic Council chamber was silent today. Alerts blinked around the room. Shadows fell over the faces of many aliens. Commander Jax Harlow stood at the center. His eyes were cold and sharp. He looked at everyone as he fixed his uniform. A chime rang out. The emergency session had begun. Jax's boots echoed as he walked to the front. "Esteemed members," he started, voice clear and strong. "Scout ships from the Zrax armada have entered the neutral zone. They are heading for Earth." Displays lit up around him. They showed alien ships speeding towards Earth. Whispers filled the room. A tall alien from the Nari constellation stood up. His voice was smooth but worried. "Commander Harlow, what should Earth do?" Jax laid out his plan calmly. "We get ready. Earth will not wait to be attacked. I suggest we set up defenses, not just for us, but for all worlds at risk." Some nodded. Others looked unsure. Jax explained his defensive strategy. The room shifted from fear to hope. Lieutenant Marsden, quiet and important, gave Jax a tablet. Jax nodded and looked at Marsden, then continued. "We start preparing for war now, hoping for peace," Jax said firmly. "I need quick support from the Council. Help us defend, and maybe we can stop this threat." The group thought over his words. The screens showed Earth, calm and blue in space. It was a strong reminder of what they could all lose. The meeting ended with quiet talks and the sound of metals clinking. Jax watched the image of Earth. He had a moment of quiet before the coming storm. Outside, the stars watched the dark clouds of war spread across the sky. Jax left the chamber with the echo of the closing session still resonating. The corridor outside was cooler, the air tinged with the sterile scent of the space station's filters. His boots clicked steadily against the metal floor, each step a measured beat in the vast silent hallway. Lieutenant Marsden kept pace beside him, his presence reassuring though he spoke little. "The Zrax armada will reach the outer markers within hours," Marsden finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was low, intended only for Jax's ears. The soft glow of the corridor lights flickered subtly as they passed, casting long shadows that danced quietly against the walls. Jax stopped, turning to face a large viewport. Space stretched out before them, stars scattered across the blackness, like dust on velvet. "And our defenses?" he asked, eyes scanning the void where danger lurked unseen. "Preparations are underway, the ion cannons are charging and the shield generators are at full capacity," Marsden replied, checking data on his handheld device. His fingers tapped lightly against the screen, a soft, rhythmic sound barely audible over the gentle whir of circulating air. "Notify all stations. I want continuous updates," Jax ordered, his gaze still fixed on the stars. He could almost taste the tension, a bitter tang hanging in the air, as the reality of the impending conflict settled in. Turning from the viewport, Jax's stride resumed, his movement swift and purposeful. Marsden nodded, his steps quick to match. "There's more," Marsden added. "The Council is uneasy. Some are pushing for negotiations with the Zrax." Jax's lip curled slightly in frustration. "Negotiations?" he scoffed. "We've seen how the Zrax negotiate." His hand clenched at his side, the memory of past skirmishes leaving a sour taste in his mouth. As they approached the command center, the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted out from the open door. The room buzzed softly with the low voices of the crew and the occasional beep of incoming data. Screens lined the walls, glowing softly in the dim light, while crew members moved with quiet efficiency. Commander Jax stepped into the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Status report," he demanded, his voice firm, cutting through the murmur. A young officer turned, his face lit by the soft blue of his monitor. "All units are on high alert, sir. The first wave of drones is deployed for early reconnaissance." "Good," Jax nodded, moving to stand before the main display. The map showed their solar system, tiny pinpricks of light marking the positions of their defenses and the approaching Zrax fleet. "Keep the Council updated, but make it clear. Our priority is the defense of Earth and Allied territories," Jax instructed, his eyes tracing the trajectories of the enemy ships. Marsden stepped forward, a faint smile touching his lips as he offered Jax a steaming cup. Jax took it, the warmth seeping into his palms, grounding him. He took a deep breath, the rich aroma of the coffee sharpening his focus. "Let's show them Earth isn't just another mark on their map," Jax said, his resolve hardening. "Prepare all personnel for immediate action. This isn't just a battle. It's our statement." The command center thrummed with renewed energy. Every officer and crew member responding to Jax's call. They were ready, each understanding the gravity of what lay ahead. As Jax watched the approaching blips on the screen, he felt the weight of command settle firmly on his shoulders. Earth's fate, for now, rested in his hands. As Jax left the command center, the vibration of his steps resonated with a purpose through the corridors of the Earth Defense Headquarters. The air was tinged with the subtle aroma of metal and electricity, a silent testament to the network of technology pulsating within the station's veins. Marsden followed a step behind, his presence like a shadow, essential but unobtrusive. Outside, the night cloaked the headquarters in its silent embrace. Jax gazed upward, where the fabric of the cosmos was punctuated by the gleaming dance of stars. Earth lay below, wrapped in the soft quilt of atmospheric clouds, the oceans whispering secrets to the shore in gentle murmurs. It was a view that never failed to remind him of what was at stake. "Commander, the transport is ready." Marsden's voice cut through the crisp night air, pulling Jax back from his reverie. Jax nodded, his jaw set firm. As they walked toward the transport bay, the ground beneath their feet thrummed with the rhythmic heartbeat of a planet on the brink of war. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain from earlier in the day, a natural calm before the storm of battle. Inside the transport, the atmosphere was charged. Crew members exchanged glances, their faces etched with the resolve of those who understand the enormity of the task ahead. Jax took his seat, the leather cool against his skin, grounding him in the reality of the moment. The transport's engines ignited, a low roar that filled the space with a promise of impending action. As they ascended, the lights of the headquarters faded into the darkness, leaving only the vast expanse of space ahead. "We have reports of local defenses rallying to our cause," Marsden reported, his voice steady despite the undercurrent of urgency. "Volunteer forces from the colonies on Mars and Europa are also en route." "Good," Jax responded, his voice gravelly with determination. "Every ship, every soldier will make a difference." The silence that followed was filled with the soft clink of equipment and the distant, whisper-like sounds of the crew preparing. Jax's thoughts turned inward, considering the enormity of the challenge. The Zrax armada was not just another enemy. They were a force that had swept through galaxies, leaving a wake of destruction. Earth had to be more than just another chapter in their saga of conquest. As the transport neared the fleet's rendezvous point, the blackness of space was punctuated by the faint glows of distant ships, like fireflies signaling to each other across the void. Each light was a sentinel, a guardian of humanity's hope. Upon docking at the command ship, Jax was met with the brisk salutes of his top officers. The ship's bridge was a hive of activity, each officer a conduit of focus and efficiency. The metallic tang of the air mingled with the sharp scent of electronic equipment, creating an almost palpable taste of anticipation. "Let's review the final deployment plans," Jax commanded, his voice echoing slightly in the hushed atmosphere of the bridge. The room fell silent as the main display flickered to life, showing their tactical positions relative to the approaching Zrax fleet. Jax stood before it, a solitary figure framed against the backdrop of their last line of defense, his shadow stretched behind him, thrown by the soft lighting, a metaphorical giant upon whose shoulders the fate of Earth rested. As the tactical display flickered off, Jax turned from the luminescent glow of the screen to face the expectant eyes of his crew. Their expressions, lit by the soft underlight of the command bridge, were mirrors of resolve and barely contained tension. The chill of the air was punctuated by a faint undertone of lubricant, a reminder of the ship's readiness for battle. "Report," Jax commanded, his voice resonant in the quietude of the bridge. "First contact with Zrax scouts is imminent," replied a young navigator, his voice steady despite the weight of the announcement. He adjusted the radar display, and a series of blips materialized, inching closer to their defensive grid. The ship trembled slightly as the engines throttled, adjusting their orbit around the dark side of the moon. The subtle vibration was a constant reminder of the vast, unyielding vacuum surrounding them, pressing against the thin veil of technology that sustained them. Outside the viewport, the blackness of space was a tapestry woven with the bright threads of distant stars. Jax watched them, their steady glow a stark contrast to the shadow of impending confrontation. "Marsden, ensure all crew are at battle stations," Jax ordered without turning, feeling the lieutenant's presence behind him, a silent sentinel in the unfolding drama. "Already done, sir," Marsden replied, moving away to convey further orders. His footsteps were a soft echo, quickly swallowed by the low murmurs of operational checks resonating through the bridge. Jax's hand brushed against the cold, smooth surface of the command console, each sensor and button a testament to human ingenuity, a defiance of the cosmic silence with their chorus of beeps and clicks. As the enemy ships drew nearer, a sharp ping from the radar broke the mounting tension. "Scout ships entering range," the young navigator announced, his fingers dancing over the controls as he zoomed in on the approaching forms. "Visual," Jax said simply, and the main screen shifted from radar to live feed. The Zrax ships breached the perimeter, their hulls glistening like dark jewels against the cosmos. Their movements were fluid, almost serpentine, as they maneuvered through the void. "Open communication channel," Jax instructed, his voice a calm force amid the storm of activity. The communications officer nodded, working quickly. "Channel open, Commander. This is Commander Jax Harlow of the Earth Defense Fleet," Jax began, his voice broadcast into the void. "You are in violation of the Terran Peace Accord. Withdraw immediately or we will engage." The only reply was the silent advance of the scout ships, their intent clear as they aligned their trajectory towards Earth's orbit. "Lock weapons," Jax ordered, his tone devoid of hesitation. The familiar clinks of armed systems were a harsh symphony, heralding the onset of conflict. The first volley of defense missiles streaked across the void, brilliant trails of defiance in the dark. Jax watched as bursts of light marked their impact against the Zrax shields, which flared momentarily before stabilizing. "Prepare for their response," he stated, eyes fixed on the screen where the enemy ships regrouped, unscathed but momentarily cautious. The taste of adrenaline was sharp on his tongue, a bitter flavor of anticipation. Jax's senses were heightened, attuned to every shift and sigh of the ship, every report of his officers, a commander in the heart of his element, at the precipice of war. The Zrax scouts regrouped after the initial impact, their silhouettes menacing against the stark canvas of space. Jax's eyes remained locked on the main screen, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. The bridge was a cavern of whispers and soft clinks as the crew adjusted settings, monitored systems, and relayed status updates, a symphony of subdued urgency. "Marsden, status on the orbital mines?" Jax's voice cut through the murmur, sharp and clear. "Armed and in position, Commander. The scouts haven't detected them yet," Marsden responded, his tone conveying a mix of tension and control. His presence on the bridge was like a steady beacon, guiding and reassurance without overshadowing. Jax nodded curtly, turning his attention back to the tactical display. "Deploy on my mark." Outside, the darkness seemed to pulse with unseen threats, the distant stars flickering like the eyes of predators from the depths of the universe. The scent of recycled air mingled with a faint hint of ionization, a reminder of the shield barriers at full strength, protecting them from the vacuum's lethal embrace. As the enemy ships advanced, their formation tight and calculated, a tense silence fell upon the bridge. Every officer's breath seemed to hold, waiting for the moment of Jax's command. "Now," he said, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying all the weight of command. A soft ripple of commands ensued, and within moments, the silent void was lit by the sudden brilliance of exploding mines. The flashes reflected in Jax's eyes, casting his face in a stroboscopic light show. The Zrax shields flared under the assault, the impacts a series of thunderous blooms of light that shook the very fabric of space. "Direct hits on their perimeter guards. Shields are holding, but they're rattled," the weapons specialist reported, excitement threading his usually stoic demeanor. "Keep pressure. Launch the second wave of drones," Jax ordered, his voice calm but edged with anticipation. The sound of his command was the trigger for a flurry of activity, fingers flying over controls, the soft beeps of engaged systems punctuating the air. The second wave of drones sliced through the cosmos, more aggressive and unpredictable than the first. As they collided with the Zrax formation, a chaotic ballet unfolded on the screen, metal and energy clashing in a deadly dance. "Commander, we're picking up unusual signals from the enemy ships," the communications officer announced suddenly, his voice tinged with confusion. "It's not just attack patterns. There's something else." Jax approached, his gaze narrowing. "Define something else." "It's coded signals, sir. But they're not military. It seems more like distress." "Distress?" The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. Jax's mind raced. Could there be a faction within the Zrax opposed to the invasion? Or was it a trap, a ploy to sow confusion and hesitation? "Trace it, find the source, and keep it quiet," Jax commanded, his senses sharpening. The mystery added a new layer to the conflict, a thread of uncertainty amidst the clear-cut directives of battle. As the crew obeyed, working to isolate the signals amidst the chaos of war, Jax stood resolute, his silhouette a dark outline against the backdrop of flashing screens. The revelation promised to unveil new depths to the conflict, possibly changing the course of the war. But for now, the battle raged on, and every decision, every command, could tip the balance. The scent of ozone grew stronger as the ship's systems strained under the demands of combat, a constant reminder of the thin line between survival and destruction in the vast, unforgiving void. As the last of the drones returned, streaks of light dimming into the black, Jax's attention was fixated on the data streaming in. The communications officer worked feverishly, his fingers a blur as they danced over the luminescent panels, isolating the strange signals intercepted during the fray. "Commander, we've traced the source," he announced, his voice steady despite the undercurrent of excitement. "It's originating from a small craft, cloaked within the Zrax fleet." Jax leaned in, examining the feed. The visual was grainy, obscured by the interference of Zrax technology, but there was no mistaking the desperate plea encoded in the transmission. "Get me a secure line to that craft," he ordered, his gaze piercing the haze of data. Marsden observed quietly from the side, his presence grounding, as always. He gave a slight nod, signaling the bridge crew to enhance their efforts in shielding their own communications from potential Zrax eavesdropping. The bridge was filled with the sharp scent of cold electronics, mixed with the faint trace of high-energy propellants being loaded into the missile bays. The taste of metal seemed to linger in the air, a testament to the steel nerves required to face the unfolding scenario. "Connection established, Commander," the communications officer said, his voice a notch higher, strained with the gravity of the moment. "This is Commander Jax Harlow of the Earth Defense Fleet," Jax began, speaking into the communicator. His words were measured, his tone deliberate. "Identify yourself and state your intentions." The reply was a crackle at first, then a voice emerged, rough and strained. "This is Lieutenant Carathal from the Zrax opposition. We seek asylum and a chance to fight against our own fleet's commands. We do not support their actions." A murmur rippled through the crew, a mixture of shock and intrigue. An opposition within the enemy's ranks was rare and not without significant implications. "Keep this quiet," Jax whispered to Marsden, who nodded imperceptibly, understanding the delicate balance of trust and suspicion that colored such revelations. Jax continued, "Lieutenant Thal, why should we trust you? As a sign of faith, I'm transmitting coordinates for a weak point in the fleet's formation," the voice crackled back. "You'll find their shields are vulnerable there. It's all I can offer without blowing our cover." Jax weighed the information, the tang of risk bitter on his tongue. "Maintain your position. We will discuss your request with our council." As the connection ended, the room was thick with contemplation. Jax turned to his officers. "Prepare a scout team. Verify these coordinates discreetly. Marsden, gather the War Council. We have much to discuss." As the team dispersed to their duties, the sound of low conversations filled the space, each word a careful step on the chessboard of galactic conflict. Marsden approached Jax, his voice low. "If this is true, it could turn the tide. Or it's a well-laid trap," Jax countered, his eyes never leaving the flickering screen where the coordinates blinked ominously. Either way, the game had changed. Jax felt the shift beneath his feet, a new path unfolding, fraught with as much potential as peril. In the shadows of the bridge, the silent flicker of red warning lights painted his face, reflecting the dual nature of their next move, hope shadowed by dread. The bridge was hushed as Jax and his war council convened. The screens around them glowed, casting an eerie luminescence that reflected off their focused faces. Each member was acutely aware of the stakes as they deliberated the validity of Lieutenant Thal's information. "Verify her intel," Jax instructed, his voice a calm command that sliced through the thick atmosphere. "We can't afford to walk into a trap." Outside the command ship, the cosmos was a tapestry of darkness and light, with the glint of distant stars competing with the shadowy forms of Zrax ships looming ominously. The scout team prepared in silence, their movements swift and efficient. The scent of freshly applied lubricant on the machinery mingled with the sharper tang of their anticipation, each readying their gear with practiced hands. Their shuttle, a sleek vessel optimized for stealth, vibrated gently as its engines warmed, a soft thrumming that seemed almost soothing compared to the usual clatter of larger crafts. Jax watched from the command center, his eyes tracking the progress of the scout team on the main display. The room around him was cool, the air filtered to a crisp freshness that contrasted sharply with the undercurrent of tension that hung like a tangible thing. The shuttle slipped silently into the expanse of space, its departure marked only by a brief flare of engines that soon disappeared into the void. The mission was a gambit, a flicker of hope that the coordinates provided would reveal a chink in the formidable armor of the Zrax fleet. Minutes stretched into hours as the wait continued. Jax felt each second as a palpable weight, the silence of the bridge punctuated only by the occasional soft beep of a console or the muted whisper of orders. Finally, the scout team's signal beeped back, a pulse of data that flooded the screens with information. The bridge crew leaned in, analyzing the feed, their expressions taut with concentration. "We have visual confirmation," one of the technicians announced, his voice breaking the spell of suspense. The coordinates were accurate. There's a significant gap in their shield array, right where Thal said it would be. Murmurs of relief and renewed purpose stirred among the council members, but Jax remained pensive, his gaze fixed on the data. "Prepare for a full assault," he decided, his decision ringing with authority. "Coordinate the strike for maximum impact. We may not get another chance like this." As preparations began, the bridge transformed from a quiet zone of anticipation to a hive of activity. Commands were issued, responses given with crisp efficiency, and the scent of ozone rose faintly as weapon systems came online, readying for the confrontation. Marsden approached Jax, his face an echo of the commander's resolve. "We're taking a big risk, Jax." "It's the best chance we have," Jax replied, his eyes never wavering from the tactical display. "Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest victories." As the fleet positioned itself, the stars outside seemed to watch in silent judgment, their cold light a stark backdrop to the heated preparations within. Jax felt the deck beneath his feet thrum with the ship's heartbeat, each pulse a step closer to the inevitable clash that would decide their fate. As the Earth Defense Fleet maneuvered into position, the tension aboard the command ship escalated palpably. The crew's movements were precise, their focus absolute as they prepared for the imminent assault. Each screen flickered with tactical overlays and trajectory calculations, painting a stark picture of the battle to come. Jax surveyed the formations on the main display, his gaze sharp and assessing. The gap in the Zrax fleet's defenses, a dark void in their otherwise impenetrable armor, beckoned them forward. The air was electric with anticipation, each breath shared among the crew tasting of determination. "Initiate sequence," Jax commanded, his voice resonant against the quiet hum of activity. The tactical officer nodded, her fingers flying over the controls, initiating the complex ballet of ships designed to exploit the discovered vulnerability. Outside, the black canvas of space was soon to be streaked with the incandescent arcs of plasma cannons and the silent, deadly paths of torpedoes. The fleet advanced, a slow, deliberate crawl towards the enemy, under the cover of stealth technology that rendered them nearly invisible against the cosmic backdrop. Marsden stood beside Jax, watching the unfolding scenario with a stoic calm. "All ships report ready," he informed quietly, ensuring his presence supported, not overshadowed, the weight of command resting on Jax's shoulders. "Engage on my mark," Jax replied, his hand hovering over the console. The seconds ticked by, each one drawn out and heavy with the gravity of their choice. Around them, the ship seemed to breathe in unison, a low, anticipatory pause in the rhythm of operations. Then, with a single, definitive gesture, Jax pressed forward. "Now!" The effect was instantaneous. The front lines of the fleet erupted in a blaze of firepower, torpedoes and lasers slicing through the darkness towards the Zrax ships. The initial impacts were bright flashes of destruction, silent in the vacuum, but resonant with impact. On the main screen, the enemy's response was immediate and chaotic. Their ships scrambled to reorient, the sudden onslaught disrupting their formations. Communications crackled with updates, reports of enemy shields failing under the concentrated fire. "Their central command ship is exposed," a strategist called out, pointing to a blinking icon at the heart of the turmoil. "Direct all fire there." Jax nodded, his expression set. "Focus the attack. Break their backbone." As the battle raged, the sensory details aboard the command ship were a stark contrast to the violence outside. The air remained cool and controlled, the only smells those of electronic equipment and the faint odor of coffee lingering from earlier strategizing. The bridge's ambient lighting cast everyone in a soft glow, punctuated by the stark flashes from the display screens showing the battle's progress. Every crew member was a study in concentration, their senses tuned to their screens and instruments, the tactile feedback of their consoles under their fingers, a constant reminder of their connection to the fleet and its fate. As Jax watched the enemy's central command falter under their concentrated assault, a small, grim smile touched his lips. They were winning, but he knew this battle was only the beginning. The mystery of the Zrax opposition, the strange plea for asylum, and the uncharted repercussions of their attack loomed large in his mind, each a thread in the complex tapestry of war they were weaving. With the Zrax command ship floundering under their assault, the Earth Defense Fleet surged forward, seizing the momentary upper hand. The bridge of Jax's command ship was alive with the electric pulse of imminent victory, screens flashing with tactical updates and the status of their advancing forces. Jax remained anchored at the command console, his eyes never straying from the live feed of the battle. The stark white of his knuckles as he gripped the console betrayed the tension that his composed demeanor masked. The scent of burning circuits wafted faintly as the ship's systems were pushed to their limits, processing the flood of data. "Commander, we've breached their outer defenses," reported a tactical officer, her voice a crisp echo in the charged atmosphere. "Push through to the core. No let-ups," Jax commanded, his directive slicing through the din like a laser through the dark void outside. As their ships penetrated deeper into the Zrax formation, the visual on the main screen shifted. Blasts of energy from their weapons painted the darkness with violent bursts of color, each explosion a temporary star birthed in the agony of war. Suddenly the ship lurched slightly, a shudder that ran through the metal bones of the hull, more felt than heard. Marsden steadied himself against a bulkhead, his eyes meeting Jax's with a silent question. "Minor hit to our starboard shield," came the immediate report from a nearby station. "No significant damage." Marsden nodded, his focus returning to the auxiliary controls, his movements measured and precise, ensuring their tactical responses were seamless and swift. Amid the chaos, a new blip emerged on the radar, distinct from the Zrax signatures they had been tracking. "Commander, unknown vessel approaching fast from the quadrant we cleared earlier," announced the sensor operator, his tone tinged with surprise. Can you identify it? Jax queried, pivoting towards the display. It's not Zrax. The configuration is unknown, the operator responded, adjusting the sensors to enhance the image. Visual, Jax demanded, a frown creasing his brow. The screen flickered, then showed the approaching ship. Sleek. Unlike the bulky Zrax designs, its surfaces gleaming subtly as if cloaked in shadows despite the absence of light. It moved with deliberate grace, a predator among sheep. Open a channel, Jax instructed, his curiosity piqued by this new player. Static filled the bridge for a moment before a voice, metallic and cold, filtered through. This is the sovereign of the free bounds. You are engaged with our enemy, and thus you might consider us allies. Jax exchanged a look with Marsden, both aware of the potential implications. Allies in space were as rare as they were volatile. What are your terms? Jax asked, knowing well that alliances were never without their price. For now, observation. We have interests in seeing the Zrax diminished, the voice replied, enigmatic and smooth. As the communication ended, the mysterious ship slowed its approach, hanging at the edge of the battle like a specter. Jax's senses were alight, the taste of metal in his mouth more pronounced as he considered this new variable. Could this sovereign be trusted? Or was it merely another threat masked in opportunist's clothing, waiting to strike at a moment's weakness? The answers, he knew, were vital and could not be rushed. As the sovereign of the freebounds held its position at the fringes of the battlefield, Jax felt the air in the command center grow thick with unspoken questions. His crew's eyes flicked between their stations and the main screen, where the enigmatic ship remained a silent sentinel. Keep it under surveillance, Jax instructed, his voice steady despite the swirling undercurrent of uncertainty. The tactile feedback from the console beneath his fingers was a grounding reminder of the immediacy of their situation. The operator nodded, adjusting the sensor array with deliberate motions. The faint clicking of keys and the soft whir of cooling systems provided a steady backdrop to the tension. Outside, the void of space was a canvas of chaos, with Zrax ships regrouping for another assault. The flashes of their cannons cast ghostly shadows across the faces of Jax's crew, each burst reflecting the volatile nature of their predicament. Marsden approached, his voice low as he updated Jax. Our allies from the colonies are holding their positions, but we can't predict how long they'll withstand a renewed offensive. Jax's jaw tightened. Reinforce their flanks. I don't want any breaches. His command was punctuated by the sharp scent of ozone as the ship's shields absorbed another distant hit. As they fortified their defenses, the communications officer intercepted a new transmission from the Sovereign. Commander, the Sovereign is signaling. They're requesting to assist in the offensive. Turning to face the screen, Jax's eyes narrowed in contemplation. The ship's sleek design seemed almost too refined for a war of such brutality, its intentions as opaque as the void it floated in. Put them through, he decided, the metallic taste of risk lingering on his tongue. This is Jax Harlow. Specify the nature of your assistance, he demanded, his stance firm and unyielding. We observe and adapt, the voice from the Sovereign replied, cryptic as ever. Our technologies are complementary. Allow us to demonstrate. Before Jax could respond, the screen flickered with new data, a schematic of a coordinated strike plan involving their combined forces. The plan was audacious, possibly as perilous as it was promising. Jax reviewed the strategy, his senses sharpened by the stakes. Implement a test formation on the eastern quadrant. If your tech holds, we expand your involvement. The Sovereign's assent was a simple pulse of acknowledgement, a subtle vibration through the comlink that felt like the promise of a storm to come. As the fleet adjusted, implementing the test strategy, Jax felt the deck beneath his feet resonate with the thrum of the ship's engines, each pulse a beat in the quickening tempo of their coordinated assault. The battle resumed with renewed ferocity, Earth and Sovereign forces intertwined in their movements. The sight was strangely balletic, a dance of destruction choreographed among the stars. The effectiveness of the Sovereign's technology became apparent as the Zrax lines, faltered under their unconventional tactics. The air was filled with a charged energy, a mix of adrenaline and cautious optimism as each volley found its mark. As the skirmish drew to a close, Jax watched the display, the data before him suggesting a turning point in the battle. Yet the mystery of the Sovereign's sudden aid hung heavily in the room, a riddle wrapped in the enigma of their untested alliance, which promised as much risk as it did reward. The resounding success of the joint strike reverberated through the command center, not through noise, but through the series of confirmations lighting up the monitors. The Sovereign's technology had not only held, but excelled, slicing through the Zrax's defenses with a precision that was both awe-inspiring and slightly unnerving. Jax stood before the main display, his eyes tracing the arcs of light that illustrated their tactical maneuvers against the Zrax fleet. The air in the command center was sharp with the electric charge of excited, if cautious, chatter. The subtle shifts in lighting from the screens bathed the room in a pulsating glow, casting long shadows that seemed to flicker with the residual energy of the battle. "Prepare for Phase 2, Jax ordered, his voice cutting clearly across the room, silencing the murmurs. The crew's movements became more deliberate, the sense of urgency manifesting in the rapid typing and swift exchanges of data. Outside, the darkness of space was a stark backdrop to the devastation wrought by their newfound alliance. Wreckage drifted silently, glinting when it caught the light from distant explosions, a visual reminder of the battle's ferocity. Marsden approached, his expression unreadable. The Sovereign's motives are still unclear. Their aid, while beneficial, isn't without potential cost, he remarked quietly, ensuring only Jax could hear. Jax nodded, his gaze still fixed on the screen. "Keep a close watch on them. Any change in their pattern, I want to know immediately." As the next phase of their strategy rolled out, the sounds within the ship shifted subtly. The whir of processors working overtime blended with the distant clangs of maintenance crews reinforcing the hull. The smell of heated electronics mixed with the more organic scent of sweat and determination from the crew. The Sovereign's ships moved with an uncanny grace, weaving through the debris and remnants of battle. Their movements were fluid, almost predatory, as they positioned themselves for another coordinated assault. This ballet of ships and weaponry unfolded under Jax's watchful command, each sequence choreographed to exploit every newfound weakness in the Zrax armada. "New transmission from the Sovereign," the communications officer called out, a slight strain in his voice betraying his concern. The room fell silent, all eyes briefly turning towards the screen before resuming their tasks. "Display it," Jax commanded, his body tensing slightly in anticipation. The message was concise. Objective nearly achieved. Prepare to consolidate forces for final push. "What are they planning?" murmured one of the tactical aides, voicing the question that hung in the air. "We stay the course. For now," Jax decided, his reply firm. "But alert all units to be ready to adapt. We may need to pivot quickly." The final preparations for the assault were marked by a heightened sensory experience. The coolness of the air contrasting with the warmth radiating from the overworked consoles, the tangy bite of ionized particles near the shield generators, and the soft vibration of the deck plates as the ship braced for the impact of incoming fire. As the fleet advanced, the mystery of the Sovereign's endgame added a layer of tension to the already electric atmosphere. Jax remained vigilant, his senses attuned to every shift in the dynamic of battle, prepared to alter their strategy at a moment's notice. The uncertainty of their allies' intentions was a sharp blade over their heads, as dangerous as any enemy fire. The command center buzzed with a low, intense energy as Jax oversaw the coordination of their fleet with the enigmatic Sovereign forces. The stark contrast between the urgent pace of operations and the calm, methodical movements of the crew created a dynamic rhythm aboard the ship. The scent of strong coffee mingled with the sharper metallic tang of machinery, permeating the air and fueling the crew's alertness. The light from the tactical displays flickered across Jax's focused expression, casting shadows that seemed to pulse with the ship's heartbeat. "Commander, Zrax reinforcements approaching from Sector 9, reported the sensor operator, his voice cutting through the controlled chaos. His station emitted a series of low beeps as he zoomed in on the incoming ships, their signatures bright against the dark backdrop of space. "Divert Squadron 6 to intercept. Keep them off our flank," Jax commanded without hesitation, his directives flowing seamlessly into the battle's evolving tapestry. As the Sovereign and Earth forces intertwined their tactics, the dance of their ships became almost hypnotic. Their movements were synchronized yet fluid, each volley and maneuver executed with a precision that spoke of an unspoken trust, forged in the heat of conflict. However, the mysterious Sovereign ship maintained a slightly detached position, its sleek form gliding through space with an elegance that belied its deadly intent. Marsden watched it with a mix of admiration and suspicion, noting how it seemed to observe the fray with an analytical detachment. "Keep monitoring their communications. Any deviation from the plan, I want to know immediately," Jax instructed, his gaze lingering on the display where the Sovereign ship held its course. The clatter of keyboards and the soft murmur of voices filled the command center, each member of the crew attuned to their tasks. The tactical display updated continuously, showing the shifting lines of battle where Earth and Sovereign forces gradually pushed the Zrax back. Outside, the ballet of war raged on, silent in the vacuum of space, but vivid on the screens inside the ship. Explosions flared like new stars born from violence, their light fleeting and extinguished as quickly as it appeared. "Sovereign is signaling again, sir," the communications officer announced, a note of urgency in his voice. The message was brief. "Prepare for the critical strike. Timing is paramount." Jax processed the information, his mind racing with the implications. This strike could decisively turn the tide of the battle, but it also meant relying heavily on the Sovereign, whose true intentions remained cloaked in secrecy. "Confirm readiness and sync the countdown," Jax decided, his decision firm. "Inform me the moment the strike sequence is initiated." As the preparations for the critical strike were set into motion, the aroma of ozone became more pronounced, a byproduct of the high-energy weapons charging throughout the ship. The entire vessel seemed to thrum with anticipation, every sensor and screen focused on the task at hand. Marsden approached Jax, his voice low. "This could end it, one way or another." Jax nodded, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Or it could begin something new," he mused, aware that the outcome of this next move could redefine their understanding of the galaxy's power dynamics. The mystery of the Sovereign's ultimate goal hung over them like a shadow, adding a palpable tension to the already electric atmosphere as the countdown began. As the countdown to the critical strike ticked away, Jax surveyed the holographic display of the battlefield, each ship and formation plotted with clinical precision. The ambient light from the displays painted the crew in hues of blue and green, their faces set with determination as they prepared for what could be the final engagement. "Coordinates set. Synchronization with the Sovereign is locked in," announced the tactical officer, her voice steady but laden with the gravity of the situation. The crisp sound of her confirmation echoed subtly in the command center, merging with the low murmur of strategic discussions. "Deploy the decoys now," Jax ordered, pointing to a sector on the display that was key to their plan. The tactical officer complied, and moments later, small blips representing the decoys moved toward the Zrax fleet, their trajectories designed to mimic a major offensive. Outside, the vacuum of space conveyed none of the turmoil within the ships. The decoys, silent but luminous against the backdrop of the cosmos, drew the attention of the Zrax, who maneuvered to intercept what they perceived as a significant threat. "Initiate Phase 2 of the plan. All units switch to silent running," Jax commanded. The ship's systems dimmed, and the usual vibrations through the deck plates lessened as the engines powered down to minimal output. The tactile sensation of the ship's power decrease was subtle, yet unmistakable. In the dimmed light of the command center, Marsden moved closer to Jax, his presence reassuring. "Energy signatures are now masked. The fleet's visibility is significantly reduced," he reported, his voice a soft rumble in the quiet of the bridge. "Perfect. Tell the Sovereign we are moving to position for the strike," Jax responded, his gaze never leaving the display where the final movements of their intricate plan were taking shape. As the Zoltrax focused on the decoys, Jax's fleet, now just shadows among the stars, moved into a flanking position. This maneuver was the culmination of months of strategic planning, its success resting on precise timing and flawless execution. The Sovereign's ship, a sleek silhouette against the darker void, positioned itself at the vanguard. Their communication came through clearly. "Strike force in position, awaiting your command to proceed." "Execute on my mark! Mark!" Jax's voice was the spark that lit the fuse. Immediately, the scene outside transformed. The decoys exploded in a series of blinding flashes, creating a momentary screen of light. Under this cover, Earth and Sovereign forces unleashed their firepower. Energy cannons fired in synchronized salvos, their paths traced by brilliant lines of light that cut through the darkness towards the unsuspecting Zoltrax ships. The Zoltrax, caught off guard and reeling from the sudden and severe onslaught, scrambled to respond. Their ships, designed for straightforward confrontation, were ill-prepared for the guerrilla tactics employed by Jax's fleet. On the main screen, the results were immediately apparent. Zoltrax shields faltered under the barrage, and several of their ships were breached, causing cascades of secondary explosions. Back on the bridge, the crew allowed themselves a brief moment of celebration, their faces illuminated by the glow of their screens, before turning back to their consoles to manage the aftermath of the attack. "This is only the beginning," Jax said, his voice low but clear, as he prepared to direct the next phase. The battle was far from over, but this victory was a testament to their planning and adaptability. The alliance with the Sovereign, still shrouded in mystery, had proven its worth, setting the stage for the next moves in this high-stakes chess game of interstellar warfare. The aftermath of their coordinated strike was starkly visible on the main display of Jax's command center. Wreckage from Zoltrax vessels floated through space, illuminated by the distant light of stars, casting a solemn reminder of the conflict's toll. The air inside the bridge was heavy, laden with a mix of triumph and the unspoken awareness of the cost it had exacted. "Assess full damage and update fleet status," Jax commanded, his voice resonant yet tempered with the fatigue of battle. The response from his crew was immediate, a flurry of activity as data was gathered and analyzed, the soft clicks of keyboards punctuating the tense silence. Outside, the remnants of the Zoltrax fleet regrouped, their movements sluggish, disoriented by the ferocity and precision of the attack. This pause was critical, and Jax knew they had to capitalize on it swiftly. "Prepare all units for the final push," he instructed Marsden, who nodded, his face a mask of resolve as he relayed orders. The strategic map updated continuously, glowing lines and dots marking positions and trajectories, a dynamic battlefield laid bare in digital form. The scent of ozone was now faint, a residual trace of the recent high-energy discharges. It mingled with the sharper aroma of cold coffee, left untouched during the tense phases of combat. Jax's palate was dry, the taste of anticipation and adrenaline lingering like a metallic residue. As the Sovereign's ship maintained its position, a stark silhouette against the void, its intentions still as enigmatic as its sleek, dark form. Jax watched it warily, aware that its allegiance was provisional, tied to the mutual benefit of the moment rather than any deeper loyalty. "Visual on Zoltrax command unit. They're attempting to rally," reported a sensor operator, his voice cutting through the buzz of strategic planning. The display zoomed in on the largest remaining enemy vessel, its armor scarred but still formidable. "This is our moment," Jax stated, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Focus all firepower on that command unit. Break them here, and the battle is ours." The crew responded with a renewed vigor, coordinating the final assault with meticulous care. Ships realigned, their cannons targeting the Zoltrax command unit with clinical precision. The bridge vibrated softly as distant booms of their weaponry reached them, transmitted through the vacuum by their own ship's hull. The final confrontation was intense, a crescendo of light and strategy that unfolded across the cosmic stage. The Zoltrax ship, caught in the relentless tide of Earth and Sovereign firepower, began to falter, its shields flickering and failing. Jax felt a brief surge of satisfaction as he watched the enemy's resolve crumble, but his thoughts quickly turned to the future. "Marsden, Initiate peace talks with the remaining Zrax factions. It's time to end this, he declared, his decision clear and immediate. As the battle drew to its inevitable close, the sensory overload of earlier eased into a quieter tension. The soft beep of the communications channel opening for negotiations overlaid the faint, almost imperceptible hum of the ship's operational heart, ready to transition from war to diplomacy. The bridge, once a nexus of war, began its shift towards becoming a platform for peace. The stark lighting softening as the immediate threat receded, leaving Zrax and his crew to navigate the delicate process of forging lasting stability from the ashes of conflict. The command center had quieted down, the frenetic pace of battle replaced by the somber task of reconciliation and repair. Zrax stood at the forefront, overlooking the celestial canvas now dotted with the remnants of a fierce confrontation. The air was tinged with a crisp, clean scent, a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere of combat hours before. "Commander Harlow, the Zrax emissaries are ready to begin negotiations," Marsden announced, his voice steady, carrying the weight of the moment with practiced calm. "Patch them through," Zrax responded, his posture relaxed yet commanding, his eyes reflecting a seasoned warrior's resolve mixed with a diplomat's prudence. The screen flickered to life, revealing the worn but dignified faces of the Zrax leaders. Their appearance, once menacing and alien, now carried the fatigue of defeat and a cautious hope for peace. "Zrax leaders, the conflict has ended," Zrax began, his tone not of triumph but of solemnity. "Your fleet is disabled and your forces are in disarray. It's time to discuss the future, a future where we coexist without the shadow of war looming over us." The Zrax commander, his skin shimmering slightly under the transmission's glow, nodded slowly. "Commander Harlow, your tactics were formidable. We underestimated Earth's resolve and your capability. We seek an armistice and assurances that our people will not be persecuted." Zrax's response was firm, yet imbued with a fairness that had always underpinned his leadership. "This war was never about conquest for us. It was about defense. Earth will honor a truce that respects the sovereignty and safety of all involved." Marsden watched from the side, his expression unreadable, but his presence reassuring. The negotiations continued, each word carefully weighed and measured as they crafted a treaty that would be historic. As the discussions drew to a close, Zrax turned to address his crew, who had gathered quietly behind him. "Today, we demonstrated not only our strength but our capacity for mercy and peace. Let this victory be remembered not for the battles we won, but for the peace we achieved. This is our legacy." His words resonated through the command center, leaving a palpable impact. Crew members exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of relief, pride, and a newfound respect for the delicate power of diplomacy. The Zrax, once adversaries, now partners in peace, signed the accord, the stark lines of the digital document marking the end of hostilities. As the signatures were appended, the command center erupted in subdued applause, a respectful acknowledgement of the moment's significance. Zrax stepped away from the console, his mission complete. Outside, the stars shone with a serene intensity, the galaxy itself a silent observer to the events that had unfolded. "Let us move forward," Zrax spoke, his voice carrying a quiet authority. "Not as victors or vanquished, but as equals, guardians of a peace hard-won and dearly valued. Today, Earth did not conquer. It understood and was understood in return. This declaration, a powerful closure to the harrowing ordeal, underscored humanity's indomitable spirit, a testament to their tenacity and compassion in the face of overwhelming odds. The Galactic Council, once terrified and pleading, would now look upon Earth not with fear, but with respect and a hopeful gaze towards a peaceful future. In the tranquility that followed the treaty signing, Zrax stood at the observation deck, gazing out at the expansive void that had once teemed with the chaos of battle. Now it lay serene, a vast ocean of darkness punctuated by the occasional glint of distant stars and the gentle drift of debris, silent reminders of the recent turmoil. Beside him, Marsden joined in contemplation, his presence a steady echo of the resilience they had both showcased. "What now, Commander?" he asked, his voice carrying a mixture of relief and anticipation for the future. "Now we build," Jax replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon of space where Earth hung, a vibrant sphere of blues and greens, a beacon of life amidst the endless night. "We build not just defenses, but bridges. Mars, Europa, even the Sovereign. Our future lies in unity, in understanding each other, in the peace we've so dearly won." Marsden nodded, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "And the Council? They'll be watching." "They'll watch us lead by example," Jax affirmed, turning from the viewport to face his friend. "We showed them Earth is not just a battleground, but a force for peace. The Galactic Council begged us to leave Earth out of the war. We did one better. We ended the war." The command center was abuzz with activity, but not for war. Crew members were busy coordinating relief efforts, establishing communications with former foes, and planning the reconstruction of damaged colonies. The air was filled with a new scent: hope, fresh like the first rains after a long drought. As Jax and Marsden made their way back to the bridge, they passed through halls lined with the crew. Spontaneous applause broke out, not just for a battle won, but for a future secured. Jax acknowledged each clap, each nod, with a humble smile, fully aware that their victory was as much due to those who followed him as it was to his leadership. Arriving at the bridge, Jax addressed his crew, his voice clear and resonant. "This ship, this crew, did not just fight a war. We turned the tide of history. Remember this moment. Remember what we achieved when faced with the impossible. You all stood firm, with courage and integrity." He paused, letting his words sink in, each syllable heavy with the weight of their accomplishment. "But let this be just the beginning. Let us be the harbingers of a new era, an era where conflict gives way to collaboration, where fear is replaced by friendship, and where our children will know of war only through the stories of our past." The crew's response was not just in cheers, but in the shared, unspoken resolve that flickered in their eyes. They were ready to take on this new challenge, to shift from warriors to peacekeepers, from defenders of Earth to ambassadors of humanity. As the celebrations continued around him, Jax returned to the viewport, his eyes once again drawn to the vast, quiet expanse outside. Earth, visible in the distance, seemed to shine a little brighter, its blues and greens more vivid against the backdrop of space. "Terrified Galactic Council begs, leave Earth out of this war," Jax whispered to himself with a reflective smile. "Instead, Earth will lead the way out of this war, into peace." With that, he turned back to his crew, to his ship, to his home, ready to navigate the uncharted waters of peace, guided by the stars and the steadfast human spirit.